Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 106th edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf, and I will be joined as usual by my co-host and partner in crime, Gary Action Jackson from the East Coast of the U.S. And we really appreciate you guys listening to our show. We really appreciate you listening to the Robert Plant Pictures at 11 episode that we put out last week. We got a lot of positive feedback on that I really appreciate. It was him starting his career post Led Zeppelin, and it was a fun record for us to go back and revisit. And I wanted to give a shout out to Moving On 2660850, who is a follower of our show and is a fan of the Shout It Out Loudcast guys, who are buddies of ours. And on Twitter, he hit us up with, hey, agree that Fat Lip is the best of the bunch. I had never listened to the album before and enjoyed listening to each track via YouTube before you would talk about them. Robert can be frustrating as a fan, but admire his move forward philosophy. Great pick and an interesting episode. So thanks, Moving On. We really appreciate that. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate everyone who checks us out. And you can find us really anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, iTunes, Spotify. Good Pods is very good to us. We are often on the top 10 of their music lists, and we appreciate everybody interacting with us on there. And so if you want to be like Moving On, you can interact with us on Twitter at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. And maybe if you're thinking about it, guys, if you like the show, you can give us a positive review at one of those spots. It just helps us find more rock and roll fans like you. Now, for this week, we are going back in the vaults for something that we really love that affected us in a big way, and that's Aerosmith's Permanent Vacation, which came out 35 years ago in 1987. Now, this may not be the best or our favorite Aerosmith album, but it hit us right at that right time. We were like 14, 15 years old. Aerosmith had been gone for a little while. They were huge in the 70s, early to mid 80s. They had their issues, lineup changes, drug problems, all that kind of stuff. They got back together thanks to Geffen Records. They were making a comeback. And the big thing that helped launch them was Run DMC covering Walk This Way and putting them in the video. It was huge for Run DMC, no doubt, but it was even bigger for Aerosmith. So the next year, 87, they come back with their own album, Permanent Vacation. And it's got big hits on it. But it's not just Joe Perry, Steven Tyler, Toxic Twin, bend tunes. They bring out side writers, really for the first time. And that was all due to John Kalodner, A&R man extraordinaire, who is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for Geffen, suggesting you've got to work with some other people, and I'll bring you Desmond Child, and I'll bring you Jim Vallance, and I'll bring you Holly Knight, and we'll get you some hits that you can get on the radio. So there's a mix. There's some great rockers in here. They got the big ballad Angel, which went way up to the top of the charts, but you got hard rocking Dude Looks Like a Lady. You've got Magic Touch, which I absolutely love. And then you've got some kind of funky songs like Hangman Jury and things like that. So it's an eclectic mix. May not be their best, but after maybe selling 4 or 5 million total records on their last 3 or 4 records, this one sells 5 million in the US alone. It put them back on top in a big way, thanks in big part to Geffen getting them all over MTV, investing in some videos, and John Kalodner forcing them to work with some outside writers, which really got them some great hits. We're going to go track by track. You can listen to little snippets of them along the way. Now, as usual, we like to remind folks that we are part of the Pantheon podcast. You can check us out at Pantheon Pods on Twitter. Go to pantheonpodcast.com, where you can see dozens of great music-related shows, amazing hosts, fantastic guests. And we always like to give shout-outs to folks who we've had on our show or we've been on theirs, like the great Paul Stevenson of Vintage Rock Pod and This Day Rocks, like Martin Popoff, History in 5 Songs, like Christy Alexander Hallberg, Rock is Lit, like Jay Scott from The Hook Rocks, and like the Kiss Kings, Tom and Zeus of the Shout It Out Loudcast. We appreciate the shout out you gave us on your 200th episode of Eddie Trump Boys. And if you listen closely to this one, you might hear a little something from them in here. Also, of course, we have to thank our amazing sponsor, rarevinyl.com. Look, it's the holidays, guys. I know you got to get something special for that rock and roller in your life. Go to rarevinyl.com or EIL.com. You can get first edition records. You can get rare and mint condition records. You can get tour programs, sometimes with ticket stubs in them. That rare 7-inch single, that rare 12-inch single, whatever you're looking for. They have for a 250,000 items in stock. They ship all over the world. And if you use code podcast, you can get 10% off every single thing you buy, not just for the holidays, but everything going forward. So please go check out rarevinyl.com or EIL.com. Use the code podcast, PODCAST. They have an amazing team, a wonderful staff who not only figures out what they've got, but they keep it in good shape and they ship it to you in just as good quality. Please check out rarevinyl.com. Now back to Aerosmith. Yeah, I mean, I guess we knew Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way and Dream On from the 70s because we're kids of classic rock American radio. But Run DMC was a big deal to us in like 85, 86, 87. They're all over MTV. They're introducing the suburbs to hip hop, to rap. And so we wanted to see Run DMC. We're like, oh, okay, well, they just kind of cover this old Aerosmith tune. Oh, yeah, I know that one. And the video was big with Steven busting through the wall of the studio because they were right next door and then getting on stage with them. It was a pop culture classic, and it really helped relaunch their career as headliners in arenas, stadiums all around the world. And it was the album Permanent Vacation that really took them to that next level. So Jackson and I are going to go ahead and jump in here, guys. 1987's Permanent Vacation by Aerosmith. We'll go track by track right here on The Wolf. I got to tell you, Jackson, you know, if people ask you about, you know, favorite bands, I always say it's always the same. It's the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Rush, plus I like Oasis. That fifth spot can be anyone based on what I'm listening to at the time. Sometimes it's Pink Floyd, sometimes it's Iron Maiden. Back in the day, it might have been Van Halen. And I never put Aerosmith up there. But when anybody ever asks me who's the greatest American rock band, because I'm such an Anglophile, it's easy. It's Aerosmith. There may be other bands I like more, but I love Aerosmith. And you can't deny not only their impact, but just the number of records they've sold and the different eras of Aerosmith, man. It's the greatest comeback story in the history of rock and roll.
Right. And they're a band that really knows what they're doing, what the audience is looking for, and then they give them that. And you're right. I mean, they were down for the count. They were out of business. Everybody was just gone on drugs and alcohol. They get back together. They have two careers. I mean, there's always the school of thought that the hardcore Aerosmith fans don't like the 80s and 90s stuff because that was the hits and they had the MTV success. But I mean, like you said, you can't argue with success. They came out of the drug fueled times. Yes, and had a 5 million selling record. And let's see, while we're here, let's just see after that.
No, look, man, listen, I mean, you can trace it pretty clearly. Like when I talked about it on our Christmas show, on Christmas time in Hollis, Aerosmith was done. They broke up. Joe Perry went and did the Joe Perry project. Brad Whitford did Whitford St. Holmes. And they got in Rick Dufay and Jimmy Crespo to play guitar in their place. And they made the record Rockin' a Hard Place, which did not do well. And they're not touring. And it's the early 80s, so New Wave is the thing, and all their contemporaries are kind of gone, right? I mean, Led Zeppelin's gone because John Bonham died. The Eagles have broken up. The big 70s acts, are all gone. Black Sabbath has a new lead singer. They're all gone, right? So Aerosmith's trying to kind of keep going. They're playing clubs again. Joe Perry's living in a halfway house. And they all kind of, all right, we can get back together. And they went and got clean. And their first record back is Done with Mirrors. But no one buys that record. That's not all over MTV. You don't hear any of the songs on Done with Mirrors on the radio, like ever. Not at the time, not in classic rock now. After their big comebacks, like, oh, you might have missed this one from Done with Mirrors. No one ever said that, Then in 1986, Rick Rubin's like, hey, Run DMC, if you want to sample Walk This Way and do kind of a rap cover of it, why don't we get Aerosmith to participate? We got to have their permission anyway, right? So not only do they get the permission, but they get Steven Tyler to come and do a little singing on it. They give Joe Perry to play a little bit of guitar in it. They put them in the video. And that was, again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, right? It was huge for hip hop. It was huge to get hip hop into the suburbs, the kids like us. And it was really big for Run DMC. But ultimately, it was much, much, much bigger for Aerosmith, for Run DMC to do Walk This Way and put them in their video.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, like you said, Done with Mirrors, I can't remember who it was, whether it was, I think it was Tom Hamilton was talking about, they're excited. we're back together. We're going to write this record. And for some reason, you put everything in reverse on the cover. Like you were supposed to hold it to a mirror and see. It was like this. It just didn't work. It was just a bad idea. So you're right. I mean, I guess they toured for that.
Probably.
Maybe. I don't even remember that record coming out in 85.
No.
I don't remember any videos. I don't remember anything about it. I remember Walk This Way. And then it was like, because you wanted to see Run DMC, they were the hot, fresh new thing. And then it's like, oh yeah, there was this band called Aerosmith, and they were huge in the 70s. And that's a really good song, and it's a good groove, and they look cool, on stage with the Run DMC guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're right. And then they roll into this record, and then boom.
Kaboom. Because, Draw the Line, which is still them being pretty badass rock stars, but the wheels are starting to come off,
Mm-hmm.
And it's got the song Draw the Line, which I love, but it's not necessarily their best. It sells 2 million copies. Then the next one's Night in the Ruts. It's going down a little further. There are some Aerosmith fans who really like this.
Yeah.
But compared to Toys in the Attic and some of the Rocks and some of the other stuff, it's not nearly as good. And so maybe it sells 1 million, maybe not quite 1 million. Then Joe and Brad leave. They do Rock in a Hard Place. Did it go gold? Maybe it goes gold just on the strength that it's an Aerosmith. And then the new one, Done with Mirrors, I think maybe it goes gold, but again, it's just because people are buying Aerosmith, right?
Right. I mean, which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, a lot of people would be excited to sell 500,000 copies, but to Aerosmith, it's a swing and a miss. You're right. Probably most of those sales came from people who were fans that just picked the album up because they wanted to hear something new. And then that was it.
Right? Okay. So then, all right. So those 4 albums, those are their 4 last albums. They did some greatest hits. Look, the Aerosmith greatest hits album is like, they came out in 1980 or 81, whatever that was, is Diamond or Double Diamond or something like that. They sold a ton of those. They did some classics live stuff, which are kind of like bootlegs, but not really, a little later in the decade. But for the most part, those 4 albums, that's about 4 million US, and each one is kind of less than the one before it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into Permanent Vacation with the boost from Run DMC. It's like, oh no, here we go. 5 million in the US alone, something like 8 million overall. Then it's Pump, sells even more. It's like 10 million overall. Then it's Get a Grip, one of the biggest selling albums of all time, 22 million. Diamond in the US alone. And then 9 Lives, which is actually one I didn't get, because at that point it was like I was over Aerosmith, like I had outgrown them. Like I was psyched about Permanent Vacation, Pump, and then Get a Grip. Get a Grip was huge when we were living together in college, man.
Yeah. And I think by the time 9 Lives came out, they had kind of figured out the new Aerosmith formula, and the songs kind of all sounded the same. So yeah, for us, it had passed it by at that point in time. But yeah, Get a Grip was huge. I mean, like you said, they had a couple of big hits off of that, and that just came rolling out. I think that was huge, just out of the box.
Very big. They reestablished themselves with Permanent Vacation. Pump was even bigger, and they had 3 big singles off Permanent Vacation, but I think they had 5 or 6 off of Pump. They're also boosted by, they're doing a lot of videos now. Obviously, Geffen and John Kalodner probably deserves more credit for Aerosmith's success than Steven Tyler and Joe Perry put together, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, from 1986 on.
And it's interesting, too, because I didn't realize that Done with Mirrors was produced by Ted Templeman of
Van
Halen fame, and even he couldn't help them over that hump.
Right. And Bruce Fairbairn, who we actually talked about a couple of weeks ago, we were talking with Martin Popoff on our BOC episode, because he did produce BOC, and he produced Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, but he produced these 3 albums, Permanent Vacation, Pump, and Get a Grip. And that's, I mean, overall, man, that's like 40 million albums sold altogether. It's unbelievable, right? So his place is pretty well set. He also worked with people like Poison and people you would know, people who were successful at the time, So he had a big hand in it. But, getting the videos out and having the making of Pump, which was a video kind of showing behind the scenes when they were in Canada, recording it, doing the sessions and stuff like that. Some of that footage was used in the videos they used. I'm specifically thinking about What It Takes, the video.
Okay.
But I think they used them in a couple of of the different videos there. And so, they primed the pump, and then they're in the Wayne's World 2 soundtrack, and they're in the movie, And so by the time Get a Grip comes and they get Alicia Silverstone to be in all their videos, like Crying and Crazy and all that stuff, they're huge. They're bigger than they ever were because the young kids are like, hey, this Aerosmith band is cool and they've got great tunes. Whereas the older people, or the people who skewed older their tastes like you and me, were like, yeah, this is a classic band from the 70s and they're back, and you can listen to their old stuff and their new stuff all together.
And especially since I think it was, what was it, like 91? They put out the Pandora's Box. So that was that was big for us because it reintroduced us to the old stuff.
Right.
But it was technically new. So that was fun because really, like you said, that's what we skewed toward. I mean, I like Permanent Vacation. I like Pump. But if I had to only listen to part of the catalog, it would be the older stuff.
Yeah,
because
that's the Toys of the Attic all day long.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And because it's awesome, that's why, and it's so good, But they're on a roll at that point. I mean, the big ones, Greatest Hits came out, so like 6.5 million in the U.S., maybe 10 million worldwide. 9 Lives, 4 or 5 million in the U.S., 11 million, something like that worldwide. A Little South of Sanity. I think I didn't buy that live album because I thought the cover was goofy. But it looks like it's actually, and it's not taken from one show. It's taken from many shows off 2 different tours. So it's really almost like a greatest hits live of the era. Don't know why I didn't really get it. I guess it was $30 at the time. And I'm like, goofy cover. And we've got plenty of Aerosmith. It's not like I didn't have those songs, right? I had every single studio album that they were playing off. So I don't know. But between Geffen and Kalodner and MTV, plus the boys being sober, it really brought them back to the forefront. But honestly, the real story about Permanent Vacation is them working with outside writers for the first time. That's the story of the record.
And I think that was John Kalodner.
Yes.
His idea. So how do you pitch that? Like, fellas, you got a lot of heat coming off the Walk This Way, Run DMC project. It's time to make another record. Okay, we've got some songs. Listen, I've got an idea. How about we bring some heavy hitters in here and really put something together that people will like? I don't know. That's the first time they've used outside writers. I mean, the people that they picked up had written hits in the past, so it wasn't like, I don't know who this guy is. I mean, Desmond Child had already had big hits. Holly Knight, Jim Vallance.
All of them.
I wonder how that went. Were they originally like, screw you, we write our own songs, or is it like, maybe we need to change something up since Done with Mirrors was such a dud?
Probably so. Look, they're back and they're sober. And if you fail, your sobriety is really going to be tested, right? They don't want to go back to that. It's like, okay, yeah, we want a hit. And Geffen wants them to have a hit. There's no doubt about it, right? So how do you do it? All right, let's mix it up. Let's bring in some songwriters. And yeah, Jim Vallance, who's he written with? Oh, a couple people may have heard of: Rod Stewart, Carly Simon, Ozzy Osbourne, Alice Cooper, Kiss, Scorpions, wrote What About Love for Heart. Big hits for Bryan Adams, like Run to You, Cuts Like a Knife, Heaven, Summer of '69. I mean, did Bryan Adams ever write any of his own songs? I don't know. Seems like Jim Vallance did it all, So he wrote some big ones. Holly Knight's worked with so many people, and she's worked with Kiss, and she wrote Love's a Battlefield by Pat Benatar. She wrote The Best, like Simply the Best, Better Than All the Rest. Okay. That's Holly Knight,
Yeah.
Better Be Good to Me, another Tina Turner song, wrote The Warrior. It did Invincible for Pat Benatar. So she's written a lot of songs. She's had a lot of hits over the years. And of course, Desmond Child just has the magic touch, even though he didn't write Magic Touch. We'll get to that. Desmond Child, songwriter, Hall of Fame. I mean, wrote I Hate Myself for Loving You for Joan Jett, wrote You Give Love a Bad Name, Living on a Prayer, Bad Medicine for Bon Jovi. We're Poisoned by Alice Cooper, which I really like. Ricky Martin's Living La Vida Loca. I mean, the guy just goes and goes. He's just a natural songwriter. And so, yeah, I do think that Stephen and Joe were pretty hesitant to work with outside writers.
But Kalodner's talking to you and he's talking about these people that we could bring in, and then, you start to hear about Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't hate to have a record like that. That would be fantastic. That was all over the radio. I mean, zillions of copies sold. I don't know how many times platinum that was. I mean, 12 million or something, I think, ridiculous.
Big.
So yeah, if you're, I think especially Steven Tyler he's a rock and roll guy, but he's also a businessman. He also smells money in the air. And I think somebody was talking about one time, like he thinks every song that they have should be a single. So I think was he looking for the not Pyromania, but Hysteria deal where 8 of the 12 songs would have been singles or something like that. Yeah, I think at that point in time, he's really like, let's make this as big as possible.
And for Pump, he about got that, man. Which is only 2 years later, but still, I mean, if you think about it, and I'm going to scroll down here while we're talking about it, but okay, we've got 10 songs on Pump. Love in an Elevator was a big song. Janie's Got a Gun is a big song. The Other Side is a big song. What It Takes is a big song. And then there's a couple of others on there like Young Lust or If I Ain't Fine, Monkey on My Back that you might have heard on the radio. So yeah, I mean, he got maybe half the tracks became singles off of that, and they were rolling to end up the 80s. They were on fire.
Yeah, doing huge tours. They were legitimately not a nostalgia act, legitimately big hit makers where people who had never heard songs from the 70s would show up and watch these shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And they looked great. They're all in good shape again. They put down the drugs and the booze. Steven is at his all-time best, not wasted. Look, I can't tell you he's a better frontman than Mick Jagger because that's a little blasphemous. But can you name me, maybe other than Mick Jagger, anyone who's even close to being a frontman? I'm not talking about a singer. I'm not talking about a songwriter. I'm talking about a frontman who entertains and commands the stage like Steven Tyler.
I mean, in his prime, you could throw Diamond Dave up there as the master of ceremonies.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like Diamond Dave, Steve is always on. Like, I've never seen him talk where he's just like, yeah, man, what's up? He's always scabbing a boop bop beep bop bop. It's not the cough that carries you off, it's the coffin they carry you off in. Hey, okay.
He's got 1,000 of those.
Right.
Okay.
It's always, he's always on, always. And that's what works, because then you have like you're talking about Mick Jagger, you have the other side of the coin with Keith Richards. You have the other side of the coin with Joe Perry, who's, hey man, how's it going? He's just cool and relaxed, and he doesn't have to be crazy and outgoing because he's the rock and roll cool side to Steven Tyler's manic, look at me, look at me, look at me.
He's the other side of the coin. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
And Steven's always got something colorful or something very regal or crazy on. Joe's basically always dressed in black with his shirt open. He was just always ripped. He was always tan. I don't think he's real tall. I went backstage. I actually got to shake Steven Tyler's hand, and he's maybe 5'9". I don't know if Joe Perry's 5'5".
You didn't know whether to shake his hand or pet him.
Well, he walked by. I didn't get to meet him. He kind of walked by at about 20 yards from me, and he waved to us or whatever. And he's wearing boots, and he is so short, dude.
But he's another guy too. I mean, he's not on, flipping out showman on, but I've never seen him in sweats. You always see him dressed in nines.
He always looks like a rock star because that's exactly what he is. He's about the coolest guy in the history of rock and roll. And what I did like is, around this time, like you listen to the White Snakes and people like that, there's a lot of shredding and some crazy guitar electricity coming out. He didn't really try to copy that. He's like, look, I just play my blues stuff and I'm still a badass, and I don't need to, be hammering on and pulling off and all that kind of stuff. I can just play these badass riffs and then do cool solos without being Yngwie Malmsteen or Steve Vai. And I credit him for that because he didn't try to change what he did.
That would have been horrible because could he have played like that? Probably. If he tried. But again, are you doing your own thing or are you trying to fit in with everybody else? And I'm glad that he didn't. You're talking about him being cool. There was an interview on Howard Stern where they just showed up. Like they literally just came into they walked in. They were on the air and they're like, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler are here. What? Yeah, send him in. He was talking back and forth. And he was talking about the woman in the Love in an Elevator video that he's making out with, right? Oh, that's my wife. Oh, get out of here. You said, yeah. So, and then Tyler's like, tell him the best part. Well, yeah, I met her when I was in the halfway house. Wait, you weren't a rock star? No, I was kind of down and out. He's like, that's it. I can't even take this anymore. You're the coolest person I've ever met.
So good to be a rock star. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. So they brought in all these outside writers, and look, Brad Whitford can write songs. Tom Hamilton has certainly written songs within Aerosmith. Sweet Emotion, of course, being one of them. Sometimes they will do songs as a band, and there's one of those on here. But there's only one Tyler Perry only 10 track. Everything else is for the most part, are outside writers. I think Steven Tyler did St. John on his own, and the last one, the movie, it's basically an instrumental.
Right.
All five guys get credit for it, but you got Jim Vance, Desmond Child, and Holly Knight on most all of the songs in one way or another.
Hey guys,
we'll get into all that as we
kind of walk listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast.
But I remember this coming out and it being a huge deal, a big deal. Aerosmith is back. Oh, those guys who did the Run DMC video next year. Yeah, last year. Well, they got their own stuff going on, and look how cool the videos are. What I didn't realize is that Hangman Jury was the first single. I had no recollection of that.
Yeah, I went through the singles trying to think about when I remember. See, now I can't remember. I don't remember Hangman Jury coming out. I remember Angel being massive. Dude Looks Like a Lady came out first, but now I'm like, do I remember hearing that first or I don't know.
It's Angel, and then you remember hearing Dude. You can't. It was our freshman year of high school. We had other stuff going on besides what's this band from the '70s with their big comeback doing? We had other stuff in our brains then. Yeah, but I was watching a lot of MTV at that point, and these guys were all over it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like you said, they had the. This was 87, so this was right before grunge. They had the perfect rock star look for 1987, 88.
Yeah, it looked amazing, and they pulled it off, and they kicked ass with it. All right, so let's start walking through the record here. As we mentioned, it was produced by Bruce Fairbairn, who would do this one and the next two. It's on Geffen, and it was recorded mostly in British Columbia, in Vancouver, where I think they would also make Pump. And they did a little bit more in New York City, but John Kalodner is responsible for getting all these songwriters in. And the first one, Heart's Done Time, interesting. It's a Joe Perry and Desmond Child 10 track. Mm-hmm. So not Stephen, Joe, and Desmond, just Joe and Desmond, which is interesting because the three of them would write a track eventually called Dude Looks Like a Lady. And Stephen would write a track with Desmond called Angel. So when Desmond's writing your tunes, they're going to be the singles, but this is one of the three he wrote, and it wasn't a single. But it's a fun way to kick off the album.
Yeah, it starts off, I don't know, were they whales or something? That's kind of an interesting
sirens.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, and then
the sirens kick in.
It's a high octane song. I mean, I've got a note here that says there's no real hook in here, and that's maybe why this was never a single. I mean, it's a good way to start the record. It gets you going, but there isn't really that element that would make it a single.
Yeah, there are a lot of pieces in it that make it cool, but overall, I'm not sure it is. It's got Stephen beginning doing, which is a signature of his, and he does it big time a little bit later in the record. You're talking about a woman whose man was out at midnight. He's maybe going around to pay her a little visit, very typical kind of Aerosmith lyrics. But classic guitar attack, you can tell that they're trading leads, Brad and Joe, on this song, which makes it kind of cool.
And I think that's one thing that Brad Whitford does not get enough credit for. I mean, Joe Perry is the star. We get that. He's lead guitar. Mm-hmm. He plays the solos. He plays the slide and everything else.
And he's great looking.
But that doesn't help. That doesn't hurt either. Right. Unfortunately for Brad, he is not as good looking.
Yeah. He kind of looks like a plumber's assistant a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of been sitting at the end of the bar for a while, Kind of
I was in this big band. You were? Really?
Because you don't look it.
Yeah. But if you listen to what he's doing, he's very complimentary to what Perry is doing. And I think he's a dude who knows he knows his role in the band. I was going to say his place, but that's not fair. He knows what he's supposed to be doing, and he fills in nicely around Joe Perry.
Absolutely, absolutely true. The two of them together are fantastic. I would take them as a duo against Tipton and Downing of Judas Priest. I would take them against Davey and what's his name from
Adrian Smith.
Adrian and Dave from Iron Maiden. I would take him against them. I would take him against Jill Walsh and Don Felder from the Eagles. I mean,
Izzy and Slash.
Easily. Yeah. I mean, they kick ass on this,
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's a little messy, I think, especially towards the end, but it's cool. They come back to the chorus, and Joe Perry's definitely killing it at the end with some great stuff. It's hard rock. It's Aerosmith. It is a punch in the mouth. Like, let's get going, but it's not a sing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is the lyrics on this are a little weak. Met a woman, had a man. Okay, we got it. Thank you. Yeah, it's more so it's not an instrumental. Like you don't. It's just kind of thrown in there because you need vocals on there. It's not. You're not really breaking any new ground with this one.
Right, not telling an amazing story or anything.
Right, exactly. And there's no really great turn of phrase or anything like that. It's just okay.
Which Steven is really, really good at. He's got more turn of phrase going on than anyone I've ever seen in my life. But it's just kind of not there. But still a cool way to start off the album. And not everything Desmond touches turns to platinum. Okay, next song, Magic Touch. Where do you come out on Magic Touch?
Really like this. I really like this song. I'm surprised this wasn't a single. I can't remember when I first got to this, but this is definitely a track where you listen to it when you're listening to the whole record and say, well, why have I not heard this before? Why was this not all over the radio? I mean, it's got a great hook. It's the drums at the beginning are fantastic. I don't know why don't know why they didn't release it.
So this is written by Steve and Joe and Jim Vallance. This is my favorite song on the album.
I would agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
This is one of my favorite Aerosmith songs of all time. This is, it's so good. It may be the best non-single in their catalog. It's just catchy. I do remember when I first heard it, and it was when we were living together. I'm pretty sure it was our freshman year.
I would say that also. Yeah.
I went over to Rock. I went over to see Rob and Matt, who lived upstairs at Rock.
Okay.
And Rob, of course, is from Boston, so Aerosmith. He's a big fan. They put this on. They put on the first song, Hearts Done Time. Like, okay, that song's okay, whatever. Then this comes on, Magic Touch, with that big riff.
Yeah.
And you're right about the drums.
Yeah.
This song's amazing. This is the best song. Can you play that again? Which is not cool. But I'm like, just rewind that. I want to hear that again. It's so good. Now, Steven is harmonizing with himself a little bit, which is great on the record. You can't reproduce that live the same way, but it sounds great. And then the solo isn't incredible, but it's good. It fits the song. And then it brings you back to the driving. You never know what you got till they take it away. And it's that driving beat with him kind of screaming those lyrics.
Yeah.
Those kind of, I'm coming ready or not, going to get you someday. It's so good. I love it so much. I could listen to it every day. I honestly, this is one of my favorite songs that no one knows about. When we used to dream about having a band and being rock stars, I'm like, we can't just do covers. That's no way to do it. We got to have our own stuff. I'm like, yeah, but we got to mix in some songs that people won't know, who maybe they'll think we did it. And this was always on the set list, man, thinking, because no one knows this song. So we do some originals and we do this. They won't know that it's not our song, right?
Who are we, Metallica?
Maybe we could have been Metallica, okay? We shouldn't have studied so much. Oh, wait, we weren't studying.
I was going to say, speak for yourself.
We should have sat around drinking beer, listening to records so much.
Although I do like that, that when he comes back in, and you mentioned it before, you never know what you got until they take it away. I'm like, well, whatever. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Are you talking about like when you got out of your mind on drugs and spent all your money and, hey, I was a big rock star and now I have nothing. And so is it a throwaway lyric or is it a hearkening back to something else? I don't know. But I like that. I like that sentiment of, be grateful for what you have, because when you don't, you're going to really miss it.
Yeah, it's like Cinderella's don't know what you got till it's gone. Just kind of said it in a different way, in a more upbeat, fun style, So great song. Overlooked. If you don't know Magic Touch, you got to listen to that this second.
Absolutely.
And then we morph into Ragdoll. It's like, okay, we had two straight ahead forward rockers. It's not like Ragdoll's a slow song, but it's more mid tempo. It's got the boom, pop, boom, pop, boom, bum, bow, 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 and then here comes the slide by Joe Perry, badass Joe Perry slide all through it. Great groove, great funk to this song.
And when all else fails, hit him with the chorus right off the bat.
Well, yeah, that's right.
I don't know if I would. This is one of those songs where so the problem with this record is that you've got 3 pretty massive hits off of this for classic rock. I mean, you can still hear, you turn the radio on today, you can still hear you can definitely hear Ragdoll. You can definitely hear Dude Looks Like a Lady. They throw an Angel every once in a while, but this song was massive and still is today. I didn't know if I could really listen to this anymore because I've heard it so many times. I don't really know if this song would be that great without the slide guitar in it.
No way.
Slide makes this song.
Totally. It's the whole song, if you ask me. And Holly Knight was the one who actually changed it from Ragtime to Ragdoll.
Okay.
And this was Joe, Steven, Jim Vallance, and Holly Knight. I guess the 3 of them had put it together, and it was Ragtime for Steven. And Kalodner's like, nah, we got to fix that. Holly, come in here and fix that.
Punch this up.
And she comes in and changes it to Ragdoll. And then they change some of the other lyrics. And suddenly you have a huge hit on your hands. And the video was huge. It was their 4th release. It was their last single off the record. But at this point, they're like, yeah, we got a hit on our hands. Let's spend some money on the video, right? So you've got them. I think they're in New Orleans for this. At least it looks that way. Of course, it could have been a soundstage, but I mean, it looks like they're marching down the street in New Orleans. It looks like the girls are in the windows, kind of like they would be in New Orleans, you know. And one of those scenes, it looks like they're at Tipitina's on stage.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely shots of Bourbon Street, with people on them that it's like rooftop shots down onto the street. So I mean, it could be. Yeah, I remember I went back and watched this video for this show. It was the first time I ever remember seeing the what would become the classic Toxic Twins shirt. He's got the sleeves cut out. I'm like, wow, that looks really cool. You're wearing it right now. Fantastic.
That's right.
And he had these black leather pants on with this giant fringe coming off it, and I'm thinking, can I pull that look off in high school? Like, man, that looks so cool. I could wear those things. Well, sure, you say that now, but
you'll be run out of the parking lot in those things. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just telling you what's going to happen, man.
I'm just going to warn you right now. Told you this was going to happen. Yeah, I mean, everybody looks cool in the video. It sounds great, but it's that slide, and then in the where he's playing the solo, it goes back and forth between him on stage playing, and then him just kind of sitting in a chair with the slide
on the street. On
the street, yeah, 1 foot on the amp playing. I'm like, man, you're so cool, Joe Perry.
Sick solo too, so good. Yeah. I mean, and he plays slide in some other songs. It's like you say Joe Perry slide, I say Ragdoll. Man.
Yeah,
that's absolutely it. And there's it's a very 80s Geffen music video. They're on stage. There are a lot of slutty girls hopping around doing different things in the video, And then, of course, at the end, you gotta love, baby, won't you do me like you've done before? Like just putting it right out there, like no ambiguity about what this might be about. At the end, he's kissing the girl goodbye on her front porch. He goes and jumps in his Cobra. He's driving down the street. And every girl's coming out of every house as he drives down the street, like, oh, bye, Steven. Oh, bye, sweetheart. I love you. Here comes it. Oh, bye. Oh, yeah, I remember you from 2 nights ago. Bye-bye, baby.
I'll see you later.
Every single girl's coming out. I'm like, I don't think you can make that video today. But in the 80s, that's all videos were, man. That's just so much fun.
Well, and when you think of what it would become with the, when grunge hits and everybody's so sad and dark and gray, and you've got, that's what do you do with your life? I go out and I play on stage in New Orleans, and then I go and spend the night with whoever, and tomorrow night it'll be somebody else, and I don't care because that's what I do, and I drive a nice car, and I wear nice clothes, and I am a rock star, and I'm not sad at all
about any of this. This is what I signed up for. And just to see Steven in these videos playing it up, whether he's in the video, what I would call the video part where you're kind of acting, like he's kissing the girl or whatever, or you're on the stage part where you're actually singing, performing. But obviously he's acting, he's playing a role there too. He's the best at it. He's amazing at it. And it just seems authentic. He's doing these things with his hands. He's doing his things with the scarves, with his body, maybe he's humping the microphone stand or something like that. Yes, it's all very sexual, but it's also, there's a point to all of it. It's orchestrated in such a way, and he's doing it to bring the crowd in. And I'm telling you, there's no one better. There may be someone as good, but there's no one better.
And I think he doesn't take a break even when Perry is soloing or anything else. Like he's not just like standing back, like, oh, I'm just going to get some water and stand back and watch. No, he's like you said, if he's on the other side dancing around, he's throwing the microphone around, he's mixing it up with the other members of the band. Yeah, he does not take a break. He's there to put on a show for you. He
is the price of admission.
Yeah,
and then the band is badass behind him. Kind of the way it is. All right, track number 4. On the first side, Cimaraya. Now, I don't remember this song real well, probably because it has a little bit of a strange name.
Yeah, but another Jim Vallance song.
With the Toxic Twins.
Correct. I mean, it could have been a single. I mean, it kind of has that vibe. Maybe it kind of sounds
too weird. Names too weird.
Yeah, because you'd have to explain that every time. Yeah.
Which, by the way, the definition is someone who has a beautiful personality. So even if we're on the ugly American Werewolf, maybe we're beautiful in some ways, Gary.
I like to think so. That's probably not true. But anyway, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to have to explain that every single time you play this track. Hey, remember, guy? Yeah. And it's not a place. It's not anything like that. It kind of sounds like he's singing along with the beat.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is another one, to me, like the first track, where it doesn't really have a hook. And the lyrics are kind of like walking on the line of a razor's edge, taking it as far as it goes. Okay.
That could be about drugs. It could be about a lot of different
things. It just doesn't have. Again, you're coming off of this. You're coming off of Ragdoll. It's like, can you have another huge one after that? Probably not. You got to take a break because we'll go into the next one in a minute.
Well, that's right. Yeah. That was driving Tom Hamilton bass to begin this that I like. It was great riff and some good interplay between Joe and Brad again. It's classic Aerosmith, but it's also very 80s, especially with like the guitars during the chorus and stuff like that. Like, this sounds very 80s. Again, that's easy for me to say now. Like at the time, I'd probably say, "Ooh, that's really cool." Now it's like, yeah, I think you probably did that in the 85 to 89 era.
Yeah, just kind of it's kind of a track where sandwiched in between 3 and 5, it's going to get lost.
Right. Because number 5 is "Dude Looks Like a Lady," which was a huge hit, and it was their second. It's their second single. To me, it's their first single. Okay, because they didn't make a video for Hangman Jury, whereas "Dude Looks Like a Lady" they absolutely did, and it was backed with Cimaraya, but also on the 12-inch it was backed by "Once Is Enough," which is kind of a country song.
Okay,
written by Richie Suppa, who did "Chip Away at the Stone." So I'm like, all right, well, hey, if he wrote "Chip Away at the Stone," I love that song. But "Once Is Enough" is a country song, and it does not belong on the album because it just doesn't match. You know what I mean? I saw a video of Steven doing it with Willie Nelson at Farm Aid, and I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Good cause. Willie's a great dude. It's cool that you did it with that, but I would never want to hear them play it live. Because they have so many other songs. They have so many other songs they can do. But no, "Dude Looks Like a Lady" released September 22nd, 1987. Of course, also written with the help of the great Desmond Child.
Yeah, he had like you said, he had a rare miss with Hearts Doing Time. This was a home run. Yeah.
U.S. Mainstream Rock 4, Dance Club Songs 41, Billboard Hot 100 14, Canada Top 22, so it did awfully well. And it's interesting because I think it kind of originated a little bit with, like, they saw this hot blonde down at the end of the bar, like, ooh, check her out, let's see that blonde, turn around, yeah, that's Vince Neil.
Hi. Yes. Which is how the video starts. Who is that dude that's in the videos, the guy with the beard?
That's John Kalodner.
Okay, that's Kalodner. Okay, yeah. So he was in a couple of those, including the guy who is at the wedding he doesn't look like a lady at all. Right. But so I guess it was Vince Neil. And here we go again with "When in Doubt," hit him with the chorus right off the bat. Just go right into it.
There you go, Desmond. Yeah. But no, this
Yeah.
is the first time you see Kalodner in the video, and he ends up making appearances in a lot of their videos and in a wedding dress for whatever
Yeah.
reason. But to the best of my knowledge, is the first time we ever saw him in here. Of course, they cut to some chicks, like some hot girls who were like construction workers, and they maybe cut to Steven in a bustier, singing in pink. They put him in the makeup and stuff for that too. Here's something for you, Jackson. In watching the video, there's a big A frame that's like their stage, that like kind of goes up past Joey. It's not dissimilar to the big A from the Asia Alpha tour just 4 years before, who were just happened to be on Geffen, who just happened to be managed by John Kalodner as their A&R guy. I wonder if like that stuff was laying around, or that was something that gave them an idea, like, ooh, we could do this and make a big A.
It could be. And you figure by this point in time, most people would have kind of forgotten about that, or you wouldn't make that connection right off the bat. So yeah, maybe it was like, hey, I know what the set piece is for this one. I got it in the garage at home.
But look, Joe Perry's badass on this. He's got a killer solo on it, and he even came out. He's like, look, we can't offend gay people. I don't want to make this like, oh, there's a dude looks like a lady. Oh, to hell with it, I'm out of here. And Jasmine's like, no, look, A, I'm in the gay community and I'm not offended. We're going to write this song. And B, it's more about like, dude looks like a lady, but I'm okay with it. We're going to go through with this anyway. And Aerosmith were masculine enough, and comfortable enough with themselves to say, yeah, we'll sing that song.
There's a quote from Desmond Child where it says, every 4 or 5 year old child in America was able to sing this song. I was like, do you realize this is a song about a tranny? Yeah, it's catchy as hell. But yeah, when you listen to it, it was very progressive for 1987 to have any of these topics put out there.
Absolutely. And then right before Joe's big solo, Steven's going, do me, do me, do me, do me. And then he grabs his nuts, right there in the middle of the video. I'm like, good Lord, they're not even trying to hide this, are they?
No.
It's a great Aerosmith song. It's a big hit for them. And it's fun. It's a little tongue in cheek, and it's you're not trying to insult anybody. You're just trying to tell a story that maybe it doesn't happen to you every day.
Well, and the other thing too is you got to realize that it was based on a real event. I'm sure these guys, they live a lifestyle that even the part that is crazy, the part that you don't is even crazier.
Yeah.
There was I was listening to a radio show one time, and Ace Frehley was one of the guests, and they showed something that was shocking or whatever, and people were freaking out, and one of the hosts said, "Hey Ace, you all right over there? What's going on? You're not really saying anything." And he just said, "Nah, I've seen weirder shit on tour."
Right.
and I can only imagine, like, this is not, again, anything that you think about what happens on tour, you have no idea. It's crazy.
It's pretty crazy out
yes.
there. Yeah. All right. So we move on from there. Another great big hit. It was all over the radio, all over MTV, their first single. Now we go to the 6th song on the album, last song on the first side, and that's St. John. And this is one Steven wrote by himself. It's an interesting one. It's kind of weird. It starts off with a big thump of the bass, and it's kind of like he's telling a story, like he's strolling down a back alley talking about he's a private eye, and I had this case one night.
Yeah.
She was a lovely lady. That's not what he's saying, but that's kind of the vibe that it gives off,
And it's interesting too, because it starts off with the cymbals, and I mean, he famously is a drummer. So I'm wondering, is he playing this? I mean, they don't really give credits on this one as who does what. I wonder, it sounds a lot. I don't know. I always have a hard time with when one person writes a song, like, really, you wrote everything yourself? But it definitely sounds like it's kind of more on the simple side. It's just, you've kind of got you got the cymbals, you got the riff. It's a real nice change of pace. Slows it way down from Dude Looks Like a Lady. Yeah, this is kind of a cool album track too to find.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of wrap up the side after like so many of those. I mean, the first 5 songs, none of them are really slow, right? They're all pretty straight ahead rock songs, So yeah, and I don't know. Here's the thing: Steven is maybe talking to the megaphone or singing into a megaphone towards the end of this.
Yeah,
Joe does some killer guitar work, I feel like, before they kind of bring it back together before the end. I mean, I don't love it, but it's not bad. And it was the B-side of Ragdoll,
Okay.
along with something called the Rockapella Ragdoll mix, which I actually didn't, I hate to tell you this, listeners, but I actually didn't take the time to listen to that mix because whatever. You're not going to make it better than the original, right? So you had a mix, great. I'm glad you did. You know, I'm not listening to it, but it's not my favorite, but it is, as far as when you're setting up an album that has a certain flow to it, it makes sense to put it right here, end of side one.
Yeah. Again, slow it down, give you a little change of pace. You're right. And then we're going to get into side two. You can't have everything sandwiched into one area of the record, or nobody would listen to the rest of it.
Although, I mean, there's an argument for front loading, right? I mean, you put your first three best songs, 1, 2, 3, right, and hook them in that way, get them interested. It's like, okay, well, this is pretty good. I might as well listen to the rest of this thing, which is only going to be a downer if those are your three best songs in the beginning. But you don't want to necessarily hide one of your very best somewhere in the middle of the second side. I don't know. There's a lot of theories on how to best put together a record.
Although I wouldn't argue with Kalodner.
Hey, this is Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out
Loudcast,
Loudcast, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
All right. So starting off the second side, or number 7, if you've got the CD like we did, it's Hangman Jury, allegedly their first single. And I'll tell you what was bigger than it being a single was they did MTV Unplugged. And they did this song.
Yeah.
And this is a great song for MTV Unplugged because it's basically an unplugged song anyway. You know, it's kind of a down-home blues song. It's got a lot of heart from Steven in it. It's kind of got that lead belly Robert Johnson kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and like Mick Jagger, Tyler he's a very good harmonica player, and it's always cool to hear him blowing along there at the beginning. The slide is cool. Yeah, it's kind of like that backwoods bluesy song. Yeah, it was awesome on Unplugged.
It was, but when you hear the chorus, when love come tumbling down. Yes, Joe sings background, but so does Steven. And you can hear, you can hear Steven. You can't do that live. You can't have Steven backing Steven up live, But then they come back to it with cool riff, more harmonica. It's not a typical Aerosmith song, but it is a cool one. And again, you're warming the second side up now, right? You had to cool off the first side, with St. John. Now you're warming it back up with Hangman Jury. Yeah,
I like that it picks up at about the 129 mark, because I think if the whole thing was like the beginning, it would get old. But they do a good job at kind of changing it up and making it more rocking at the end.
I agree. It's longer than you think. It's like 5.5 minutes long. It kind of has a couple of different shifts in there, which is interesting for a single, certainly a lead single.
Yeah, that's it. I would. Yeah, if you told me this was a single and like Magic Touch wasn't,
no,
that's interesting. And then this was the first single. Okay, I don't think either one of the. I would.
They released this ahead of Ragdoll. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
You released this in front of Dude Looks Like a Lady. That doesn't make sense to me, but. But I don't know. Speaking of Dude Looks Like a Lady, by the way, another reason that it may not be the same live is because throughout the whole thing is, well, that's Steven going.
Yeah.
So maybe they have people come in and horns do that bit, or maybe they pipe in that, but they don't really create that live because they can't have Steven sing that.
Right. You either have to do it with the horns or have some kind of backing track. And then there's the whole, backing track controversy of if you're piping that in, what else are you piping in?
Right. Which is a big deal now. And Aerosmith is still going somehow, all 5 of them all together. I can't believe Steven's still doing it. I can't believe Joey Kramer's still.
Is Joey Kramer still there?
Is he not?
I don't know. I heard there was some deal about how
he's had some issues. I know.
Yeah, and he showed up, and they're like, he's like, okay, I'm ready to play, and they're like, we're gonna need you to kind of audition again. Like what? Play along with the click track where it so I don't know. I mean, he was mad because he thought he was ready to roll. I'd have to look and see what the current state of this is. But yeah, he was having some problems. But I mean, the thing is, they're getting on. I mean, they're all kind of old now. I mean,
they're in their mid-70s, right?
Yeah.
Mid-70s. Joey Kramer, born on my birthday in 1950. So he's 23 years older than me. So he's incredibly old. And look, once the first number of your age is 6 and you're a drummer, you're in trouble. Because it's just physically difficult to do what you do. once you're 70, I mean, you should be looking over your shoulder.
Well, and to play the tracks that he does. We're not talking about, you're not playing blues, with the shuffle, with the little, brushes. I mean, he's playing high octane rock and roll drumming.
No, as Neil Peart said, look, I'm 64. When I'm 71, well, I can't do me anymore. Charlie Watts is 71. I can play like Charlie Watts at 71. I can't play like me at 71. Right. Bill Ward of Black Sabbath is like, look, I can't do it. I mean, I could do maybe 2 or 3 songs, but you want me to do an hour and a half, 2-hour show? I can't do it.
Yeah, your wrists must just be all beat.
Your knees. I mean, come on, man. Peter Criss couldn't do a 2-hour Kiss show. Now he could probably do 2 or 3 songs. He couldn't do the whole thing. So if Joey's still going, God love him. Let him keep going, because it's unbelievable how difficult it is to do this. And I'm just reading here something I did not know is that Joey's second wife, Linda, died this year.
Oh, geez.
The day after his birthday. And she's, almost 20 years younger than him. So I'm like, God, he's having a rough time. So, hey, we're thinking about you, Joey, and we're glad you're still in the band and still doing your thing. And that Aerosmith is still going somehow. All right, let's move on to the only track. Because Hangman Jury was written by the Toxic Twins and Jim Vallance, just like Simmer Riot was, just like Magic Touch was. But Girl Keeps Coming Apart, this is the only Toxic Twins only and song on the record. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry. So you figure, oh, all right, this is going to kick ass. And it's like, well,
you'd be wrong.
I don't love this one.
It's not great. If there was a throwaway track, this would definitely have to be it for me.
This is it, yeah.
And we were talking about him playing, Joe Perry playing the guitar before, like Joe Perry. This is the one where he throws in the whammy, and it's
maybe a little hammering,
Yeah, this definitely definitely sounds the most 80s of all the songs. Like it's trying to sound like something else.
Yeah, it's gimmicky to me.
Yes.
And they're trying too many things, right? Steven's talking a little bit to start over the harmonica, which means that's hard to play live. He's playing the harmonica and singing, can't do that, right? There's a lot of horns in it, and horns aren't for Aerosmith, for the most part. You're right, Joe's not quite shredding, but he's a lot closer than he ever really has been before or would be after. Maybe doing some hammering and some fast stuff. I mean, there's some good jamming at the end. Actually, I think Joey's great. Not only in this song, I think Joey is solid through this whole album. I think Joey is really on it, but you kind of have to be because Steven's a drummer too. So it's like, do it like this. Joey, I need you to do it here. Hold on, I'll be right in there. And then he'll show him how to do it. But look, it's too much. They're trying too many things to make this like stew. And it's not that great to me. It's probably my least favorite on the album.
Yeah, and I have a note here that says this is interesting that this is the only Toxic Twins song on the record because it sounds like somebody else wrote this. It sounds like they got handed this and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we'll include this.
I know. It's like, okay, we're going to hear something like from back in the day. No, this is totally off the wall.
Yeah.
And it's not just upbeat. It's kind of frantic. It's not even just fast paced. It's like kind of crazy all over the place. I think if they could do one over, my guess is they would pick that one.
Yeah, and then my other thing too is you've got what 11 total tracks. 12 total tracks with the instrumental. Like, did you even really need this song? I don't know.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's not bash the Toxic Twins on their only lone co-write here, because next is the big one, and that's Angel. Right, which of course was co-written between Steven Tyler and Desmond Child. No help from Joe on this one, although he does have a very nice solo, which I know nobody wrote for him. But look, this was part of the formula of the 80s, right? You're a hard rock band. You're going to have some hard rocking songs out there, but you're going to get up the charts with the ballad, right? Like Motley Crue got up there with Home Sweet Home. L.A. Guns gets up there with the Ballad of Jade. Guns N' Roses gets up there with Patience. You can kind of go on and on. It's like every hard rock, eventually Queensryche did Silent Lucidity. Every hard rock band had one of these on their albums. That's just part of the formula. And this one was huge. Number 2 mainstream rock. Number 3 on the Billboard chart, the main Billboard chart. This is when you're competing against Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's not easy to do, you know. So,
well, the other nice thing about this one is this is something to bring the ladies to the shows too. Or Aerosmith. I don't like Aerosmith. Oh, here, I'll put this one on. Oh, I love this song. Of course you do. Of course you do.
Right. Yeah, we went to see Whitesnake for Still in the Night, but the ladies came for Is This Love?
Correct.
That I'm feeling, you know, and that's why they're there, you know. But look, this song could have been a hit for a lot of different people, you know, especially with Desmond writing it. You know, Steven's in the video.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell they put a little money into this because they were on like sets for this. Joe Perry's maybe out on a desert road, but the rest of the guys like are in sets and stuff like that. Plus, they've got them on stage, and Steven's got his white kind of angelic outfit. I don't even know what you call it. Is it jumpsuit? Yeah, with, you know, some stuff on it, you know, and he's singing his heart out, you know. Plus, he's in the room with this angel, like ghost angel girl who might be taking off his pants. I don't know.
If you had to guess.
You know, but, you know, they got big chords. He's singing with the chords here. It's like, without your love, without your love.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just exactly with the big riffs right. So, again, it's not an amazing song. There's not a whole lot to it other than I think Joe's solo is really cool. But
interesting.
Huge hit.
Yeah, I was going to say this song is awful. This is an awful song.
You hate it, huh?
If it wasn't for the intro, which I always was upset with, because if it was the radio edit, they cut that down in about half.
Oh, really?
And the solo too. If you listen to the single version, this song is terrible. This is like we have to have a power ballad. Okay, cool.
Bring Desmond Child in. Let's get
out the chart. Let's fill in the blanks, and we're good, or fill in the model, and this is what we do. The lyrics are terrible. Loneliness took me for a ride. Shut up. Come and save me tonight. Come and make it all right. Anybody could have done this song. The thing that I like about this is the Joe Perry work on this. I really have a hard time that he didn't have a writing credit on this. Like this giant number 3 hit, and I don't get credit for this. And you can't tell me somebody else wrote those parts for him.
I know, but you're right. I mean, it could have been a hit for so many people.
Correct.
It's not necessarily an Aerosmith. I think what makes it Aerosmith is Steven's voice and Joe's guitar.
Right.
Otherwise, it could have been anybody. You know, Bonnie Tyler could have had it.
Correct. Yeah. It's not an Aerosmith song. It's one that they plugged in. They had a huge hit. Good for them. This is the one that propelled the whole record forward. But yeah, it's just cheesy. It was. If you listen to any other record from this time, there was a song like this on every single one of them.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely true. It was back with Girl Keeps Coming Apart. It comes out January of 1988, which was our freshman year of high school. And it was all over the radio too, you know, and then and MTV, you know, and it was out before Ragdoll was. And I remember Ragdoll being big because I like rock tunes. And I remember this would be like, yeah, okay, this is one for the ladies. Okay.
This is where the lighters come out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so, but I think we're pretty well in alignment there. I mean, if, you know, it weren't for Joe Perry, this is barely an Aerosmith song.
Correct.
And he didn't write it. It's very Desmond Child. I'm glad they had a hit. I'm glad it helped them sell a ton of records. I'm glad it got more females to the shows, but I don't listen to this one.
Yes, I will skip this one.
And speaking of not listening to this one much, this is a turning point in the record as far as I'm concerned. Because Permanent Vacation is a very odd song. I mean, honest to God, this is a very strange song within the Aerosmith catalog, written by Steven and Brad Whitford. So Brad is playing, you know, lead on this, which is kind of cool. But, you know, it starts off with some jungle noises, and then there's steel drums throughout it, you know, and I love the idea of Permanent Vacation. It's part of why they named the record that, because it's not only, it'd be great to go on vacation, go down to Saint-Tropez and retire, but it's also a vacation from all those nasty things we used to do to ourselves. You know, getting off the drugs was very, very important. I don't know. It's gimmicky. Again, the chorus to me is gimmicky. Is it fun? Yeah, sure. It's fun, but I take my rock and roll seriously, and I don't like it.
Yeah. It's strange too that this is the title track to the record. I wrote down, I like the sentiment of being on the Permanent Vacation. You know, I like the, you know, what is it? The I wrote down steel drums. I get it. We're on vacation. Thank you for ramming that into my face. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a simple deal. They throw a lot of stuff in there. It's kind of a fun, like, throwaway tune. Like, are you trying to be Jimmy Buffett? We get it. There is one line in there. My nose is clean, but I don't need no sedation. Okay. Again, we're talking about how back in the day
drugs
it was
again,
crazy.
Mostly it's about drugs.
This is one of those ones where it's like, we're definitely on the back. We're on the back side of the mountain here, because this is kind of a throwaway track. I'm glad to see Brad Whitford get a writing credit.
No doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt, and he plays well on it, and that's all good. But I mean, it's not what I'm going to want to listen to, right?
No, you can't say, "Oh, I can't wait for this one to come up next." No,
I know. Again, you're right. The sentiment, the idea of Permanent Vacation is great. It's a great rock and roll album, right? We're on permanent vacation. We just tour and do our thing. Well, that's great and all, but the song doesn't live up to its title. And then they go the fifth song on the second side, or 11th. They do the Beatles' "I'm Down."
Mm-hmm.
Now they did really well with Helter Skelter. Their version of Helter Skelter is killer, and I think maybe they were in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band movie, maybe the soundtrack with Helter Skelter. So I don't know if it was the record company saying, "Hey, you've had success with a Beatles track before. Why don't we do that?" Or I don't know why they decided to do this. I really don't. And I didn't have the Beatles version of it at the time, so I wasn't super familiar with it. I look at it, oh, this is a Beatles song. I didn't even really know it as a Beatles song, to be honest with you.
Well, it wasn't even, because I was thinking the same thing. I was looking at the dynamics of this thing. It wasn't even on an album. It was the B-side of Help in 1965.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that's why. I mean, I'd heard it before, like it was kind of rolling around in my brain somewhere, but I couldn't pick it out right off the bat. The interesting thing about this was it was Lennon and McCartney's try at being Little Richard. So it's kind of like, you're paying tribute to the Beatles and Little Richard at the same time. Yeah, I'd love to know why they picked this. Was this a favorite of theirs, or was this, like you said, somebody saying, "Hey, you hit it big with Helter Skelter, let's try again"?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. And then there's a lot of piano work at the end. So you mentioned the whole Little Richard thing. Like, there's a ton of piano. Is that Steven? I mean, he's the only one who ever plays piano with Aerosmith. So I assume that's him kind of really jamming on there. So I don't know, maybe he was jamming on it and people are like, "Oh, you should cut that, you should lay that down."
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure.
Maybe it's, this is my favorite Beatles song they ever did. Who knows? There's definitely a story there somewhere.
But it's a 52-minute record, and that's a 2-minute song. So maybe it should be a 50 or a 49-minute. I don't know. I mean, most people forget, "Oh, you did a Beatles song. Oh, well, I got to hear that." It's not that. I'm not saying they don't do it well. It's just, it's not my favorite Beatles song.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah, and you're already in it. You're already in the long. I mean, because what are most records? It's got to be at least 35, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Most are in that 40 to 44 range.
Once you get into the over 50, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's more on here. Okay, well, let's keep going.
Especially at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the movie,
which
is an instrumental written by the five of them. It starts with the bass. Again, Tom's right there. It's very ominous. There's some odd speaking in it by some woman that is speaking in some kind of different language.
I couldn't pick it out. I mean, I could hear her speaking, but I couldn't tell you what language that was in.
Yeah, and then other than that, it's an instrumental. It's an odd one. It's kind of like we thought we had something here, but we just couldn't get it finished. We couldn't get it with any of Stephen's lyrics. We couldn't get it with any of the other writers we had, so we kind of put it out as is.
Yeah, and then again, back to your comments before on "I'm Down." Why did you do that? I mean, you already had enough material to release a full-length record. I mean, maybe it's because everybody has a writing credit. I don't know, and that maybe has something to do with sales. But yeah, I don't know why you put this in there. It wasn't like it was part of anything, or it was in a movie. It was in a movie or anything like that. Right. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you may be onto something there with, like, everybody gets a writing credit. Like, we got to have one song where everybody gets something on there. But honestly, I mean, most records of the time were about 10 songs and 42 to 45 minutes. And if you take off the last two, you've got 10 songs and 45 minutes. So I don't know. I mean, look, overall, I really like the album. It has some huge hits on it. It's got some great Joe Perry work. The band sound very together when they're not trying to get too cute about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think that they wanted to be back on top. Geffen wanted a big hit. They wanted to revive Aerosmith because they knew if they could get them new hits, then that was going to spur old catalog sales. It was going to spur merch and concert sales. It was going to, get them to the next level, which it absolutely did. It's just some of these songs that just, there's a little too much to them, and it's just not necessarily Aerosmith.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a little bit too much polish on this. Like you wanted, like you said, you wanted big hits. You wanted to be on the radio. These guys were ready to go again, not just oh well, we'll keep limping along. I mean, they were refreshed, revitalized, ready to go. Yeah, a little bit too much polish on a couple of these things. It gets off the Aerosmith track.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I know. I was reading reviews on this, and they were, like they got C's for this, because there isn't a whole lot there,
right?
Content wise, but that's a lot of this. It's not really. I mean, you knew this wasn't going to be the White Album. Okay, this is a straight ahead rock and roll record. Take it for what it is. Put it on in the car and just start driving.
Look, I think all credit to John Kalodner for it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the one who's like, look, we can help you, but you got to bring in people who know what they're doing, people who can write a song with anybody about anybody. So, and look, I've seen kind of the sessions. It must have taped some of it when Desmond came in to start writing with Steven. I think Joe was more apprehensive about it than Steven. But then, Steven's like, okay, well, what do you got? And then Desmond throws out some lines, and Steven shares this, like, oh, no, let's try this. And all of a sudden, he's like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah,
I can do this. This is not so bad. So Kalodner really deserves a lot of credit for putting Aerosmith back on track. And look, I mentioned earlier the kind of what it takes, the kind of the behind the scenes, the making of Pump video that you could get on VHS at the time, and they culled some pieces of it to make a couple of videos on it. But there's a point where Kalodner comes to visit them in Vancouver. Like he flies up to kind of check in. What's going on? What am I hearing? And he plays him some songs. And Steven's hopping around like, what do you think, John? Are the 2 singles? What do you think, 3? Maybe 4? You think they're 4 singles? I mean, he's like, that little dog who's jumping around Spike. Like, what do you say, Spike? We going to get a cat today, Spike? No, Spike, you don't want to do that, do you, Spike? He's like, Steven, you're a rock star and a sex symbol, and you're hopping around this little bearded hobbit weirdo like he's God Almighty. But honest to goodness, he kind of was, as far as Steven Tyler was concerned. It's like, he's going to get my stuff on MTV. He's going to get it on the radio. So if I can make him happy, then I win.
Correct. Yeah, correct. You get what you get what you want. You get to be back on top. You get to be a huge rock star. This was only the beginning. I mean, once you got to like Pump, they were just everywhere. This was kind of like the launching pad for them for another 10 years worth of really
12 years.
Yeah,
15 years. I mean,
big hits, in the social conscience, everybody knew who Aerosmith was. Right. There's a ride at one of the Disney parks that they collaborated with or something that I think is still there. So I mean, they were very much even if you didn't know who Aerosmith was, like even you couldn't name one Aerosmith song, like you heard that name before, like, oh, they're a band, right? Yeah, everybody knew that.
Absolutely, and then they get into all these movie soundtracks that they're on. They're on the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack. They're on Wayne's World 2 soundtrack. Hell, they're in Wayne's World 2. Yeah. The Armageddon, Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Could that have been any bigger for them? I mean, I feel like it was bigger than the movie was, the song. Yeah.
Right. And then so that's another example of them saying, that was Diane Warren, I think, saying, what? We've had really good success with stuff that other people have either written or collaborated on. Absolutely, we'll take a Diane Warren song, not an Aerosmith song either, but a huge hit for them, just massive,
enormous for them. Yeah, I mean, just huge, And so when they do just push play, or they do 9 lives, or they will put out a live album. Okay, well that goes triple platinum. It's a double out, or it's crazy that their greatest hits albums come out and go multi-platinum. They do these huge tours. I've seen them a couple of times, I guess, and they really deliver live. Actually, me and my buddy Hunt paid way too much money to go backstage to meet Steven Tyler and a tour and everything. they actually let you go on stage and grab his microphone and take a picture screaming into it with his scarves on it and everything. It cost way too much for what we got out of it. But, it was still a fun thing to do. And it was pre-marriage, pre-kids. So it's like, yeah, I could spend some money on myself.
You got a couple bucks laying around.
Yeah, why not? And I got to meet Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick, who were opening for them. By the way, that Hanging Out Down the Street song, that is the theme song
the 70s show.
The 70s show.
Mm-hmm.
That's Draw the Line. It's Draw the Line. And what shocked me was,
and that's Cheap Trick, wasn't it?
That's Cheap Trick, yeah. And they played it live while they're opening for Aerosmith. I'm like, first of all, you're playing a song that's the theme song of a TV show. Secondly, you're playing it fronting for the band that you blatantly ripped the rip off of. You guys are something else. But he was funny. He was a good guy. Like, we were all walking by in a line, and all of a sudden he popped out of his trailer because he's kind of a character. Right? And even though there were probably 30 or 40 of us, he popped out right when I was walking by his door. So I just kind of stuck out my hand and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he shook my hand. I was like, that was fun. That was cool. Funny guy,
Little extra thrown in there for you.
Yeah, I also won some Aerosmith refrigerator magnets. I don't know, they had some kind of a drawing or something. And like the big gift was like, you get an autographed record or something like that. But one of the smaller gifts was you get these, and it was like leftover from the last tour. Like, they were just kind of like laying around. Like, okay, we still got these. You guys want them? Like, yeah, hey, great. And then I had my aunt, who's a master scrapbooker, but she doesn't know anything about rock and roll. Put together like a scrapbook for me while I was out of the country. Yeah, she put the Aerosmith, those magnets. She took them out and put them all over the Rolling Stones page because she didn't know the difference. God.
Okay. Well, you tried. Thank you.
Exactly. Now I keep everything in a box
instead
of in a nice book. But anyway, now I consciously quit seeing Aerosmith after a while because I've seen them at their best. I don't want to see them in their 70s. I don't want to see them in their late 60s. I saw them in their 50s when they were still pretty badass. I hear they're still awesome live. I don't know personally. The last time I saw them live was not quite 20 years ago. I saw that one tour. It's like the Honkin' on Bobo tour, and that's 2004-ish, I feel like. And then they did a co-headline tour with Kiss, where I think they would kind of switch off headlining. Okay. And then they kind of had a little bit of an abbreviated set. So I saw that, and then that was the last time I saw them. But they're still going. They have not quit. And Steven, he had to have foot surgery or something like that. They gave him some narcotics to help him. He's like, "Ooh, this is going to be bad for me." He immediately checked himself into rehab so he could go. And he's 75. And he's like, he could just kind of go back out and do his thing. To do what he does at his age is unbelievable. Again, Mick Jagger is the only one who comes close.
And it's crazy to think that after you've done all that time and effort, put all that time and effort into being sober, it literally is you're one step away from just being right back there again.
I know it's sad, but it's just part of the work that you have to continue to put in no matter what.
Yeah. And so that's a testament to him, I'm sure, especially, being on these giant tours, there's even if you tell, hey, everybody's sober on this tour, get that stuff away, if you really wanted it, it would be very easy to get anything and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. But this is the one, 5 times platinum in the US, maybe 6 to 8 million sales around the world. Pump was even bigger than that. Get a Grip was even bigger. Get a Grip was as big as Permanent Vacation and Pump put together, sales-wise. Are you kidding me? That's unbelievable. I mean, it's like Hotel California level sales. It's crazy. And it's also coming to the end of that era. Mid 90s, you could still do that. Late 90s, okay, starting to get in trouble. Early 2000s, it is over.
You talk about record sales?
Yeah.
That dried up once Napster and LimeWire hit the universe. Yeah, that was it.
Well, that wraps up episode number 106 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock podcast on Aerosmith's Permanent Vacation. Got to take a second to correct myself there. I mentioned that Helter Skelter was a hit for them in the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club movie. It was actually Come Together that Aerosmith did for that movie. They did get on the charts, and it's on some Aerosmith greatest hits records. Helter Skelter, I believe, was only, or at least at first, only on Pandora's Box, the box set that we actually mentioned during the show, which we got. It came out in 91, and I got that for Christmas, and we listened to the heck out of it. So Aerosmith was huge for us in college, not only because Get a Grip came out, and we were still all psyched about Pump, which had come out a couple of years before we went to college. But it was that box set, Pandora's Box, that really got us familiar with the old stuff. So we're listening to the new stuff. We're listening to all the old classic stuff. Then Get a Grip comes out. They've got a ton of videos out with Alicia Silverstone, and they sell over 20 million copies in the United States. Really pretty amazing. And I got to tell you, though, Tom Hamilton, Joey Kramer, Brad Whitford, Steven Tyler, and Joe Perry all do an amazing job on the Permanent Vacation album. You've got to give all due credit to John Kalodner, A&R man extraordinaire, who not only helped revive them and get them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but got himself into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a contributor. So we may not have loved every song off Permanent Vacation, but it had big hits. It had some great album tracks. It had them working with a lot of outside writers, which had good and mixed results. You can't argue that long-term, it was absolutely the right thing to do. Look at the sales of Rockin' a Hard Place and Done with Mirrors, and look at the sales of Permanent Vacation, Pump, and Get a Grip. You're talking maybe 3 million versus maybe 40 million. Okay, it's night and day. And Aerosmith are still going to this day. Thank goodness the bad boys from Boston are still doing their thing. So, as usual, we want to know, folks, other than the come together Helter Skelter thing, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You have got to let us know. You have got to email us at uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can also tweet us or DM us at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. You can check us out on Instagram. You can check us out on YouTube. We thank our family from Pantheon Podcasts. We thank the good folks at rarevinyl.com or EIL.com. It's the holidays, guys. If you need something for yourself or for that special someone in your life, go to rarevinyl.com, use code podcast, save 10% off all of your purchases, and get them in for the holidays. Next week, well, I don't know what's going to come out next week because we got a couple things going, and I honestly don't know which one we're going to put out first. So you're going to have to tune in to know. But as usual, folks, we want to tell all of you rappers all around the world,